Thank you for joining me today. It's Brian Gubernick, and welcome to the No Days Off podcast, where we believe that every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. It's been a little while since I've talked about my mentor, one of my most favorite people to ever grace this planet, Mack Newton. As many of you know, if you've been listening for quite some time, Mack Newton passed away just a short time ago, but he left an incredible impression on me and all of the No Days Off Nation that had the opportunity to meet him in person, or at least have heard me share his words over the past couple of years. And I want to talk about Mack a little bit today, because Mack had so many words of wisdom. But one thing I was thinking about that he had shared with me, and I wanted to talk with our No Days Off Nation today about, was this idea that you are only as big as your self-concept. You're only as big as your self-concept. Now, what did Mack mean? I think that most people believe that their limitations are external. For example, there's not enough time or money, or I don't have enough connections, or I don't have the right experience. But the truth is, the biggest limitation any of us ever face is likely internal. It's your self-concept. It's the story you believe about who you are and what you're capable of. It quietly determines almost every decision you make. It determines every risk you take or are willing to take, and every result that you produce. Mack said you can never exceed your own self-concept. Let that sink in for a moment. You will never outperform the identity you hold of yourself. If you believe that you're capable of great things, you'll probably find a way to make them happen. And if you're destined, or if you believe you're destined to fall short, you'll unconsciously make sure you do just that. Now, think of your self-concept like a governor on an engine. We've been using that analogy a few times as of late. But think about it as a governor on an engine, right? No matter how powerful the car, it can only go as fast as the limiter allows. Most people do not realize they've installed one on their own lives. They say things like, I'm just not good with money, or I can never run a marathon, or I'm not a natural leader. And each of these statements is a belief disguised as a fact. And beliefs shape our behavior. If you think you're not a closer with respect to sales, I'm not a closer, you'll probably find ways to avoid closing. And if you think you're not a runner, then you'll sabotage your training, at least sabotage the training long enough to become not a runner. What you believe about yourself ends up becoming your boundary. And every one of us, though, we have this little voice, this voice in our head, the one that's whispering that you're not smart enough, or you're not experienced enough, or talented enough. And that voice feeds on a certain fuel, and that fuel is doubt. The problem isn't that it speaks. The problem is that most people have a tendency to listen to it. So Mack would tell you, you've got to interrupt that voice. Mack says, when that voice starts chirping, you literally say out loud, stop. Stop it. That physical interruption breaks the pattern just long enough to replace it with something better, something that's more true. But here's the thing. That voice isn't reality. It's not reality. I would call it repetition, because it's the echo of past failures and fears and comparisons, these things that you've allowed to loop in your head for years, and it's going to keep looping until you break it. Now, psychologists call this the self-fulfilling prophecy. You become what you expect to become. If you expect to fail, you find reasons not to try. If you expect to succeed, you'll find solutions no one else sees. The words you attach to your identity become commands to your subconscious mind. When you say things like, and I'm guilty of this, you say things like, I'm terrible with names, your brain stops trying to remember them. When you say things like, I'm getting better at remembering names, your brain goes to work finding ways to prove it true. The statement itself is not the power, it's the belief that's behind it. So if this is true, if you believe what Mack is saying here, and as I'm relaying here to you today, the question then should be, how do I go about building a bigger self-concept? How do I go about building a bigger self-concept? I think number one, you've got to audit your language. Start listening to how you describe yourself. Every time you say, I'm not the type who, recognize that it's a limit you've placed. And so rewrite it. Say instead things like, I'm learning to, or I'm becoming someone who, right? These are small tweaks that I think begin to open much bigger doors. So number one, audit your language. Number two, stack evidence. Confidence does not come from affirmations. It actually comes from evidence. So every single time you follow through, even in the smallest of ways, you reinforce a new identity. So do the small things that prove you are in fact who you want to become. And then lastly, number three, environment. Surround yourself with mirrors, not with critics. The people around you either reflect your potential or they reflect your past. They reflect your potential or they reflect your past. Choose those who see the best version of you and who remind you of it when you maybe have a tendency to forget. I think at the end of the day, your self-concept is a choice. You can believe you're capable or not. You can see yourself as a leader or not. You can decide that you're meant for more or not. But whatever belief you choose, you're probably right. So, as we wrap up, I want to remind you, audit your identity language today. For the next, day or two, catch yourself every time you say something like, I'm not the kind of person who, or I can't. Catch yourself every time you make a statement like that. And then write it down and then rewrite it into a version that serves you. So for example, I'm not good at speaking. Maybe rewrite it to be, I'm becoming a better communicator every time I speak. Or when you say things like, I'm not disciplined, instead reframe it as, I'm learning to follow through even when I don't feel like it. Do that consistently, and your self-concept and your results will start to grow together. Because you're never going to outperform your identity, but you could always build a bigger one. That's all I have for you today, the No Days Off podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. So let's get after it.